We are live.
Okay. Pharrell is with me. He's going to sing Happy to get us started, so don't begin until you hear it, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Do you have the link, Heim? What have you been doing with the links?
What links?
There are links?
The links to the live broadcast.
Oh, I've just tweeted it.
All right. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Hello, Internet. I'm Justin Freed. This is episode 142 of the tech podcast called inThirty. Special guest today, Kelly Guimont of Oregon. Right, Kelly?
No, of Oregon.
I apologize. And I always forget what
It's okay, it's
URL.
an East Coast thing.
If you had to have one URL tattooed onto the back of your neck, mine, of course, would be justinfreed.com. What would yours be?
Gosh. I'm going to say kellyguimont.com so that it reminds me that I need to update that every once in a while.
Do you have that? I have never
do.
heard you. Okay, all right. So you and I are in the same boat. And, of course, then all of our listeners know what Haim Cohen would tattoo onto the back of his neck if it had to be one URL, right?
Apple.com.
Well, I wouldn't tattoo anything because I believe the rumor that Jews should not get tattoos.
Okay.
But as a temporary tattoo, I would change it to insecurityshow.com.
Okay, insecurityshow.com. All right, good. What a good tattoo that would be. Time. Okay, so today we're talking Microsoft because I think the change in upper-level management, the change in CEO has done a lot for them in a really short period of time, and mostly I'm of this opinion because I glance at Slashdot too many times throughout my week, and it seems like there have just been more instances of Microsoft opening an API or kind of compromising with its partners or promoting Windows Phone in a way that seems to actually get people excited about it than in the Ballmer throwing chairs and jumping around like a monkey days. So that is the theme of today's show. And Haim, what did we say? How are we going to do this? What is the yeah. Surface 3, right, Haim time?
We were going to talk about Surface 3, some openness. Kelly brought to the table iPad, Microsoft Office for the iPad, and then we're kind of at a loss from there.
Okay, I will dig back through Slashdot to figure it out. You know what?
We can just spend the rest of the time talking about how much less sweaty the new guy is than the old guy.
Well, that's got to be because he gets his sweat on during hot yoga before he does a presentation. That's just what he has, right?
I think.
Well, I really wanted to talk about. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I just think it's interesting, the approach, having watched not just the iPad event, but a couple of the other announcements that they've made. Just seeing that it is made more dramatic by the fact that he comes out in such contrast to what Ballmer was doing. So to me, it's a very, very publicly, it's a very, very dramatic change because we went from shrieking monkey boy to, hey, this is what we have and it's really cool and let me share it with you and the whole attitude of the whole thing, customer first and all that stuff has been great to watch.
For me, so I can jump off of there. Because I did it wrong the last time. What is his name?
The CEO, Nadella, Mr. Nadella.
Okay.
Yeah, Satya Nadella.
Satya Nadella. And having nothing to do with the chocolatey spread, but he's not going to get
Nutella.
He's not going to get caught off guard by a CNBC interviewer and give a great soundbite that says something like, the iPhone, no one's going to want those things. That's never going to work as Ballmer did. It seems like they're more on track, and from the top down, because this guy was an engineer, they're more in tune with what Microsoft is. And going back to and knowing that Windows eventually is not going to exist as we know it on the desktop, and kind of doing a top-down strategy, like going from the cloud to everything else. OneDrive could work, and Office on iPad plus Office in the browser and Office installed on the desktop, those things can work. So let's solidify this a little bit, and we'll work backward chronologically and start with the Surface 3, which I will talk about a little bit because from an industrial design standpoint, just looking at the thing, it's the best looking Surface that there's been. The specs are better, certainly. It's impressive that a device as thin as it is has a Core i3 through Core i7 options in it. But they did really smart stuff, like making the kickstand in the back. It has friction throughout the entire rotation of the kickstand, so it can be really strong at any angle as opposed to being only clicking into 2 or 3. And doing something like that, to me, the engineering behind that is huge. It's not easy to develop something where it can feel firm at any angle. And in addition, they also brought they reduced the depth of the optical stack of the device. So what you're looking at on screen, the content is much closer to the portion that you touch, which, if you've seen the newer iMacs, it just seems the content seems more alive. But it's particularly good because when you're using the new stylus, for the first time, the distance between the stylus's nib and the pixels is really, really low, so it looks like the stylus is writing directly on the screen. So those things for me impressed me. Beyond the software, which I think is probably still kind of a mess, they're moving in the right direction there. Industrial design.
Well, I mean, thanks for that overview. But I guess the bigger issue is I'm seeing more and more people have quote-unquote tried the Surface 2, and really liked it. And they said, wow, this reminds me of my desktop, reminds me of Windows 8. I'm liking this more and more, and I can see where the Connect, not the disconnect, but the connection works. And then they said, oh, but if I can't move my phone to Windows Phone because I'm locked into whatever ecosystem they're locked in there. But they give the Surface 2 at least a thumbs up.
Is that your experience, Kelly? How many have you seen?
In the wild, I have not seen many, but I have talked to people who have spent an extended period of time with them, as in not in a store, carried it around for a week or whatever, and have discovered that, at least with not with the 3, but with the 2, discovered that for a lot of things they want to do, it just doesn't work. Like, I set it in my lap a lot. I spend a significant amount of time on the bus or on the train where I need it to be solid in my lap, and it's just not. Or you get, I've heard from other people who want to like it, but the hardware itself or the software itself is what's keeping them from enjoying it. Like, sometimes I have to touch the screen, and sometimes I have to touch my keyboard, and I don't quite understand which one is right and how that's supposed to work and what makes these things go together. So part of the
it's like this is like not what I hear. I only hear like usually very positive things.
When was it you and me who went to the thing in Chelsea that Microsoft sponsored? Yeah. Cloud. Remember what I said to the lady? And this is going back to the lap problem. Okay, you can't put the thing in your lap, no matter at what angle. And I know I'm the one that began the show by saying I was so impressed by their rotational hinge thing with friction throughout the. I still am. But yes, it is not a lap device. It still isn't, and that is where a lot of the tablet is used. Like you don't have a desk when you're using the tablet. So for me, it is still primarily, I'm talking 85% and up, a desk-based device. That's the difference. And
I can see that. I agree with that.
And so this idea that it has to do both, I think that they're holding on to that for whatever reason. I think it's like a philosophical design problem that just doesn't work unless you build it with the idea that it does 100% of what both do, and that would be you get that closer when you have a really sturdy iPad case with a keyboard in it, and you take your iPad out and you throw the iPad in the holder, and then you can still put the thing on your lap like you would a laptop. The Surface is cool, I think, for writing on and for doing certain productivity stuff on, but as a laptop that can sometimes be passed around as a tablet. It's not a 50-50 thing. Right.
I think that's a very astute explanation of kind of what the hang-up is. What sort of was interesting to me in watching the marketing pieces that came out around the 3 were, first of all, with the 2, everything was head-to-head with tablets, with other tablets, whatever those may be. Whether it was, here's how we're better than a Samsung Galaxy tablet, here's how we're better than an iPad. Now they're comparing the Surface to laptops. Look how much lighter it is than the largest possible MacBook Air that you can buy. And look at all these other, and I feel like part of the reason they're doing that is because it's expensive. It costs a lot more than what the other tablets do. You can actually buy a MacBook Air. You can buy a MacBook Air for what a high-end Surface would cost you.
Well, listen to what Justin said. You can't put it on your lap. So if the market is not putting it on your lap, then you have to go with what's on the desk, and those are laptops or Ultrabooks.
It is a 12-inch screen this time with a 3:2 aspect ratio,
Mm-hmm.
which they validly point out is more natural for print material. I mean, obviously this is digital/print material, but
Right.
it doesn't. They have no illusions about the fact that this is not a Netflix device. I mean, for productivity's sake, and for using a stylus, this might be the best way to use a stylus. To me, it cuts in. What it says is that the laptop, the desktop replacement laptop, certainly no one wants those. But when in the age of cloud computing, you don't need tons of like CPU at your fingertips all the time. That's just not how people work, and they're still kind of caught in that mentality that people want to be able to run Photoshop on the same device that they casually read the New York Times on, and I just don't, and they don't. So having the Core i3 in it to me is cool if you want to run Photoshop, but it's just like such overkill. And they developed a cool new fan system so that they could do that without it having like grates on it and whatnot. But this dual purpose thing still doesn't work. And I mean, Mr. Jobs, rest in peace. He's been saying that for a while. I mean, they're getting there. They're kind of, Microsoft is making it is in the same way that a laptop was a desktop replacement. This is a laptop replacement.
Yeah,
I guess.
My problem is that I love my Chromebook. I really do. It's slow. I mean, it has the Samsung S3 processor in it, and it doesn't have 4 gigs of RAM. You update the processor, you put 4 gigs of RAM in, and you make it cheap enough. That's the replacement for just about everything. And then you have a desktop or a laptop at home where you need to do the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I want to like the Surface. I really do. I think it has a lot of potential to do something, but it's just I think the sizes are awkward. Like Dell sells a 17-inch basically monitor that's a touchscreen that has stands on it that you can take with you.
Yay!
Well, it's like the idea where it's on the
bring
desk.
that in a card table, like a fold-in-half card table with you, so you can,
But for $1,000, you can keep this on your desk. It's a 17-inch or 19-inch monitor. But if you need to move it someplace, it is movable. It's not that heavy.
Movable is different than portable too. So
it's not portable, but it's movable. So if you want to move it down to the living room, it's not that. It's a couple pounds. It's like 5-6 pounds. You can move it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, okay, but you're right. It's movable. It's not portable. And I think that Microsoft wins in what Android tried to become, where you can do all these different things and form factors. And Dell and HP, they're figuring this out. I really like those detachable tablets. So you have the screen that's touchscreen, but it docks into the keyboard that has the extra USBs and all this other stuff.
That's kind of what I was alluding to with like the nice rigid keyboard cases that the iPad has. But I think it's a win for Microsoft if a young professional can get a job at a new agency and be given a Windows phone and a Surface and then not need a laptop. And, between those two things, that works. And I don't know, think of the content partnerships that Microsoft would have to do to start getting people watching, House of Cards on their Surface, which I guess is probably going to be technically possible, but it's just, I guess it even works in an environment where someone doesn't have a TV and they're in a smaller apartment and they pop the thing up on its stand and it's basically a 12-inch portable monitor that maybe then they could control with their Windows phone. I mean, I could even see that, but it just doesn't hit the buttons that an iPad does. That being said, so the Microsoft productivity, and they're squeaking by because of what we're going to talk about next, which is moving Office into iOS. But they have not lost all relevance. They're not being they're being attacked on two ends by iCloud and by Google Drive and the Google Docs and Google Sheets suite. But it seems to me like they're going in the right direction. Now they can legitimately kind of say that Office is the underdog on these platforms. So Kelly, how have you seen? What do you see as being the biggest deal to Microsoft getting Office on iOS?
Well, for me, it's the approach, because what I remember, I've been a Mac user for a very long time, and I remember many versions of Office, with varying degrees of love and hate depending on the version. And the thing about it that stands out to me is that one of the things I always liked about my computer, about my Mac, whatever Mac it was that Apple realized they weren't the only game in town. And so if you had a Windows formatted floppy, you could put it in your Mac, and if it had text files on it, you could read those text files on your Mac. And on a Windows computer, if I handed somebody an Apple formatted floppy, back when floppies were a thing, the Windows machine had no idea what to do with it. And hard drives are the same way, SD cards are the same way, flash drives are the same way. If I take a Windows formatted USB drive and stick it in the side of my computer, if it has MP3s on it, which I can read on my computer just fine, that will all work. If I take a Mac formatted USB drive covered in MP3s and put it in a Windows machine, that one is a Windows machine, that's why I keep pointing back there. If I go put it in that machine has no idea what to do with it. And one of the things that I think is a fundamental shift for Microsoft is with Office on iPad, they realize they are not the only game in town. Because it seemed like the stance used to be, well, if you want to use Office on a tablet, you're going to get a Surface. But that's not what happened. And so, it took them a long time to kind of figure that out, I think. But I'm glad that they finally went that route, because for people who do have a need for Office, this is a good way for them to get it. And it opens Microsoft up to so many more screens that they had no possibility on before, because there's never going to be a Microsoft branded iPad. So the fact that they now have access, just like on an Apple computer, just like with Office on iPad, it's better than not having anything at all. And I think somebody at Microsoft finally recognized the opportunity in that, and that's where that shift finally happened. Like, we're not the only game in town when it comes to portable computing. And it took them long enough, but for me, it was a fascinating thing to see, because I remember when it was the opposite.
So now we should say at the near the top of this discussion, they are willing to give Apple Inc. its 30% VIG on new Office 365 subscriptions purchased through the free Office app, which I think is really interesting.
Yes, which is amazing. But Amazon is not willing to do that, which is probably a conversation for another day. Because
wait, but hold on. That's disingenuous. And I'm not defending Amazon or Microsoft. But you can't get an iPad, you can't get an Office app anywhere else. It's not like you can get Office for Android. You can only get Office for the iPad, and they can just add the 30% VIG on top of that and then break even.
Well, that's not what they're doing. It's the same pricing. But and you can edit off. So Apple and Google have already done the legwork of adopting to the .doc standard and the .xls and .xlsx standards, and they can open and edit those documents. So Microsoft had a lot to lose by having the people.
They have already lost by doing this, because I can open a Word document in Pages, which came free with my iPad.
But where they're winning out on is people still make the choice because the .doc format is too hard to kind of get, or people get upset when they upload a doc file to Google Docs and then it doesn't look perfect. People will still pay, and it's really not a lot, $100 a year for Office 365, including the cloud storage. So,
and I think you can do like $6 a month if it's just a personal, like, that's what I want on my. I only want it on my iPad. I don't want it anywhere else. I think there's like a mobile only.
If you keep Office for X amount of years, it's a problem, because you're paying this $100 a year for whatever it is. You're not going to use SkyDrive, no matter what you tell yourself. You're not going to use it. It's like telling yourself you're going to use what's the Apple version? iCloud.
But
You're not using
iCloud?
iCloud either.
But Microsoft, between Zapier and IFTTT, and maybe Microsoft will cut a deal with Dropbox, where there's going to be a portal to SkyDrive in Dropbox, or some type of intra-cloud communication. Once that bridge has been crossed, and I think it will. I mean, that might take a little while longer. They still have incentive to keep everything siloed, but maybe it'll only be for .docs and .xlsx files. So Microsoft can get you over that hump, so that if you edit something on your iPad, you don't even have to have installed Office on your iPhone. You just have to have Dropbox or something. I mean, these things can work out, but the fact is there's still movement in iOS of people purchasing the Microsoft version, even though there's tons of competition for it. So
my biggest problem was when Microsoft moved Office 2010, 2012, from a site license to a per-seat license. A lot of corporations reevaluated how important the newest version of Office was.
Yes.
And I think what they did is they said, you know what, 07 has a docx extension, the .x extension. We're going to move to that one, but we're not going to 2010, 2012, and 2014. We're just not. It doesn't cost. It just costs too much. And then as it's getting older, they saw, wait, Google Docs does just about everything we needed to do. So
and also email.
And through email and everything else. So a lot of schools, not my school, but a lot of schools are clearly jumping on the bandwagon, and they're happy with it. So Office, I think what they need to do is figure out a way to go to site license, go back to site licenses.
Microsoft had, remember, I mean, this is I don't even know if this still exists in a usable form, but Facebook Groups is somehow tied into Office.com, or was at some point, that you could share Office documents through Facebook Groups, and now of course Heim dropped out. I'm sure he'll be back shortly. You can still access Office documents through Office.com and a couple of other ways. Microsoft is pushing into the territory that is kind of following the Google Apps model, albeit very slowly and retroactively, but the experience that they give, whatever benchmarks they're trying to hit for a document creation, from a document creation standpoint, people seem to like it. I mean, I move corporations, up to the biggest one is just under 200 employees. With fighting tooth and nail, they want to stick with Office, and I thought it was just going to be the older crowds in that company. But it's not. Even when I really believe that they have a valid comparison between the two, they still prefer Microsoft's method. I mean, Kelly, I don't know the last time we had to draft a memorandum or something, but when you compare using Word to using Pages to using Google Docs, where do you come down?
Well, if I need to just get in and do something and get out, I'm probably using TextEdit. If it has to be something in .doc, then I'll probably do it in Google, because then it saves me having to email an attachment to someone. I can give them a link right to the document to do whatever they need to do. I honestly don't spend a lot of time in Pages.
When was the last time you fired up Word?
I couldn't even tell you. I have it, but I couldn't tell you when the last time was. And part of that is because I can probably get by in Pages with what I need to do, because I'm not doing a lot of that sort of document editing. Now, if we want to talk about presentation software and we want to talk about PowerPoint and Keynote, I spend a lot more time in Keynote than I do in Pages, and when it wasn't a very attractive option, I spent more time in PowerPoint than I ever did in Word. It's why I drink. But it's, for me, my workflow and stuff, I don't spend a lot of time in an actual document. And when I do, it's usually Google Docs for the collaboration purpose of it. Otherwise, I'm sharing that information in some other way.
I always find it funny that people who end up on Windows machines, for whatever reason, maybe they go to Best Buy and get one, maybe their family has always had one, maybe all of their office computers are Windows. Windows' job, in so many cases, is just making sure that the browser works enough that you can view PDFs directly from your webmail in it, and that you can do Google Docs in it. So Microsoft has this like background. It's still like this the foundation of someone's computing, like desktop computing experience, even if they're not doing anything. And part of that is because free wins out. So I think that Windows is going to go so cheap, or is going to have like a free or near free version for like a whole class of users, and Office is going to be the same. That's what's going to happen.
We talked about this last time, and I don't think so. I think that Windows and Office is their bread and butter until they have this paradigm shift in the sense that that they realize that that's what they need to do. But I don't think we're going to see it in the near future.
Well, businesses will still pay for the enterprise versions of Office with comment tracking and change tracking, but for writing a school paper, if they want to get kids young, the only thing that they have going for them is still the vestigial,
inertia.
Old-fashioned inertia too, and inertia eventually runs out if there's no more energy put into it.
Well, here's the problem with me.
Is Nathan ever gonna fire up a Windows machine and open Microsoft Word? If let's just say he was a little bit older, if he had to do a school project tonight, what's he gonna see? What's Dad gonna show him how to do it?
If he has to do a school project, probably even when he's in high school, there's still those bastion. He's gonna have those bastion of teachers that want Microsoft Word in a doc printed out.
No, they won't. What if you had to help him make a document to be printed out today?
Apparently, Google Docs does not do page numbers, and I only know that because my students tell me that's the last thing that's really stopping them from going straight to what's it called?
You're avoiding the question for some reason. If you today he says, Dad, I forgot. What time is it? It's almost 9 o'clock. I have a paper due tomorrow. I need to print it out. The teacher wants. What are you gonna do? Pages on your laptop? What?
Well, I'm just using Docs for the most part. So I would tell him Docs, and if there was a problem, I would have to print it out in Word for him.
Okay. All right. So
the problem is that Word can't go away yet because there's still a population of people who have this need to use it. Whether it has to be the margins have to be perfect. Or
let's just say there's the other thing that isn't said often enough, and I'm going to say it now, is that people just create fewer static documents than before. Because you post on Facebook, that gets rid of even some like a certain percentage of the need for Microsoft Word type documents. You make a website, you use Tumblr. Documents are about sharing information. The average person, even if you think about it, doing a calendar, making a scrapbook, or it's so much of it's been put into a totally different form that this type of static research-based document where you're printing out, it just doesn't. It's so much less important in our day-to-day lives. Okay, so let's.
Well, the problem is that in education between the ages of 8th grade, so what is that, 13 and 22, that's all you're doing, unfortunately.
Well, that will change. That will change too, where the expectation is that a final paper will be a website, even if it's using HTML just to link between the different portions of the paper.
I hope so. I hope that's where it's going.
Okay, so we said we're going to talk about the humility, the humble side of Microsoft.
In 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes. We only got two big topics in. All right. So
well, that was the big thing that I talked about earlier, which was that they have recognized they're not the only game in town. To me, that's huge, and that's the biggest piece of what I think is the new approach.
So, I think Microsoft MSFT. I think the stock hit the 52-week high recently. I think it's back up above $40 a share, and I think that the path that they're on is a good one. I support Mr. Nadella. I was going to say that the other way that they backed off a little bit was taking the Kinect away from the Xbox by default, selling it $100 cheaper.
Mm-hmm. You get an option.
So yeah, the option. Just the fact that there's the option, right?
You have the option of not being recorded in your house.
Yes, with the infrared camera on the Kinect. Anyway, I like this. It's like an inflection point in the trajectory of Microsoft's culture. I like it, and I don't feel like they're such a bully anymore, and I feel like they've been knocked down a peg, and that's good for them, and that they will make the computing experience for everyone better because they're a valid competition for Amazon, frankly, in certain areas, and Apple, and Google. So there's like it's like a 4 people in the party now. Maybe we throw Facebook in there a little bit too. But like they're like welcome back in the I don't know. They're like welcome to 2014 Microsoft. That could be the title of this episode.
Okay. On that note, let's say bye.
All right, Kelly, thanks for joining us, and on
Of
such
course.
short notice.
No problem.
And we hope Paul hopes to be back. He's just working really hard at work.
Yes, and we're all going to get those inThirty.net tattoos one day.
Yes.
All right. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.